guys, it's Benzie. I'm here with my friend Clara, and we are 2 weeks into our polyphasic sleep journey. We've been recording videos, and most of them have just been vlogs of what we're doing, but today's going to be a little bit different. We're actually going to be point-by-point responding to a video posted by Crimson Flower that was called
Watch this video before you attempt Uberman.
Yeah, and this is coming from a friendly place. I have hope for mutual understanding. Clara hopes for truth.
Yeah. I don't care as much about agreeing in the end as I do about believing that I'm closer to what is correct in this reality.
Yeah, but I just want it to be friendly and not come off as, like, accusative or angry.
Yeah, I'm definitely, like, I have an argumentative personality. That is just a truth, but I don't feel combative, or, I don't know, there's no, like, animosity. I feel like when I'm arguing in my regular life, too, it's never me against the person. It's, like, me and the person against the topic, and that feels very collaborative. So I hope that...
And that's part of why I asked Claire to help me with this, because I brought it up and they came with 5 pages of notes.
It wasn't because I'm the only person in the house with you right now.
Partly, but if I was going to ask anybody to do this, you clearly are the person.
Yeah, that's probably true.
No doubt. So I think even if I had access to my entire friend group, there's still a very high likelihood that you
still
would
ask me to argue with strangers.
Yeah.
Received.
As far as our knowledge base, I have done the Uberman sleep schedule specifically 2 times successfully for several months, and I'm currently 2 weeks into, like, a new transition of it.
And then, sort of the context of where I'm coming from is that I have not done polyphasic sleep before this 2-week so far period, but I studied math in college and other sciences, and I, like, care a lot about science and truth and formal logic and logical reasoning, and so I have practice in using discernment to decide if things are believable or not when people make claims, and that's sort of the muscle I'm using here.
All right. Yes.
Shall we get started?
Yeah, so we're gonna hit it point by point.
Yes, so he had 5 reasons, 5 sort of main arguments for why nap-only schedules, Uberman in specific, and nap-only schedules in general, were a bad idea for people to try. The first point that he made was that in order to succeed at an Uberman or nap-only schedule, you need to be a short sleeper already in your monophasic life, which I don't think is necessarily true. The vital sleep needs, like your REM sleep and your SWS sleep, it seems to be a consensus among the, like, polyphasic sleep Reddit community and, like, the polyphasic.net people. It seems to be consensus there that that when you're monophasic, you have a certain number of hours of those 2 sleep phases that you just need as an individual, and that constant doesn't change when you go to a polyphasic schedule. And I think I guess I would have to see actual evidence instead of just, like, links to blog posts that reiterate that stance. Because if we already accept that, like, sleep as a whole is not a constant need for individuals, you know what I mean? Like, it's not true. We obviously think it's not true that you need 8 hours or else, because polyphasic sleep fixes that. Then why would I believe the same thing about a component part of sleep, like REM or SWS? I think it is fine to say that, like, anecdotally, this is your experience or this is what you've witnessed, but I'm not convinced that that's, like, a universal rule.
Yeah, I feel like it's being expressed as a truth.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe it's just, like, my very semantic, pedantic kind of brain. Like, maybe if he couched it with more uncertainty, like, allowing for more uncertainty, then I wouldn't have a problem with these claims. But
I would prefer to come at things, and I would hope for other people to come at things in the polyphasic community, because there is so little data on sleep, even freaking monophasic sleep. Like, we do not know what sleep is for in a lot of ways, or how it works.
Yep.
I want to come from a place of sleep skepticism, and I want to be able to have discussions with people from that stance rather than anyone pretending like they know anything for sure.
Yeah, it doesn't feel very useful to me to, like, to I don't know, to feel certainty in the scientific process. Like, the whole scientific process, I think, is aided by saying, like, here is what the data shows us, and we need to do more. Like the scientific process is really built around continuing to seek truth. And if you look at the history of science, like, we're wrong over and over and over again. We just get better a little bit at a time.
And it's the goal to prove ourselves wrong.
Yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to read this quote from Steve Pavlina's blog, where he did the Uberman schedule by himself for like 5 months and blogged about it pretty regularly, and it was like a really good read.
I just highly suggest it for
anyone.
it's
so good. There's one of the links that Crimson Flower posted, like, this is how I found the blog. He talked about this blog as grueling, and I assumed that meant that the attempt was grueling for this blogger, but it wasn't. It clearly wasn't. It was like an enjoyable read, and it clearly was a positive experience.
Yeah, so then I thought it must be his reading experience that was grueling.
But it was so good. I don't know.
But yeah, I found it like very like page turner. I was excited to put on every next post. So I did not find either thing grueling. Yeah.
So I just have a question about that word choice, honestly. If Crimson Flower, if you watch this, please tell us what you meant. If it was you who wrote that sentence. Okay, so here's the quote. So the real question is how critical those other phases of sleep are. Do they yield any irreplaceable benefits? It doesn't help me to know what the body does during those phases of sleep. What I need to know is what the body does in the absence of those phases of sleep. Does it find other ways to produce the same benefits? Are the benefits negligible enough to be abandoned? I don't know, nor do I think anyone else presently has these answers.
And one thing we don't have an exact quote for, but Steve Pavlina also talked about in that same blog post, was that it can be similar to a lot of foods. Like, we don't 100% know which foods people need, and if you stop eating certain foods, you can get those nutrients from other places. So if we stop sleeping in this exact way, are there other ways that our body can get the things that it needs?
Yeah, you sound a little bit like you're saying you can't be vegetarian and be healthy, which, like, we know isn't true.
And including, there's also people who eat only meat for years and are healthy. So.
Yeah, and I have, like, more sort of internal biases about that. I'm like, ooh, you're eating only meat? But actually, now that you say that, I, like, do know more people than you who eat, like, I know someone who eats really, like, only meat.
Yeah.
And it's like she has, like, some kind of a digestive, like, I don't know, it's like a thing. She, like, can't digest vegetables.
There's, like, whole tribes of people who have been eating only meat for generations.
Right. So, like, that's the point. It's like, this is revealing a bias of mine, not revealing, like, my knowledge of scientific truth and nutrition. Like, So, not necessarily true that everyone has to eat broccoli or chicken or any one particular food. And I feel like without more, like, rigid scientific evidence, I'm not going to believe that everybody needs some X amount of REM or SWS or any other piece of sleep. Yeah, I also want to talk about the guy in Vietnam. There is a Vietnamese man whose name I will not attempt to pronounce, but if you Google Vietnamese insomniac, his Wikipedia page comes up. But basically,
I'll actually put a link to it in the description.
Oh, cool. Yeah. But he had, like, a fever in the 70s or something, and basically his brain just changed, and he has not slept in decades. And that, to me, is, like, another convincing counter example of, like, we don't know what sleep does, we don't know why we need to sleep, and it is possible to never sleep and still have cell repair and memory processing and all of those sort of important human functions. So, in any case, this Vietnamese insomniac man, that is a pretty strong counterexample just to cast doubt on universal claims about sleep and humans and their requirement of it.
Yeah. Did you write down that quote where he said 10 years in that he sort of felt not great?
Yeah. I mean, because this started in the 70s, and it wasn't until, like, 2006 that the guy was like, yeah, I feel a little weird. I think he said he felt like a plant out of water, or without water or something. Yeah.
Well, no, he said he was starting to feel like a plant with no water.
Right.
Not like, that he had felt that way.
It was phrased really kind of, I mean, sort of casually. Like, I imagine it like, I don't know, it's as kind of a surprisingly nonchalant way to say, like, yeah, I'm a little sleepy after 40 years. Like, that's how
Also, how much of that is from not sleeping, and how much is that from just general aging?
Right, who knows?
Yeah.
Sleep is a lie. Yeah, the other thing is, like, the last point on Crimson Flowers, point number 1, is he said that the community has shown that you need the same duration of slow wave sleep and REM no matter what, which, like, those kinds of extreme universal claims really depend on, like, your N value for the data and the demographics of the data, like how good of a representation of the human race is that sampling, and
which are all men under the age of 25.
Mostly
Yeah.
men under the age of 25, and like down to the age of 14, which I feel like it's actually like not recommended. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, although I guess maybe I should require more scientific. For me, the risk ratio for like being underage and attempting polyphasic sleep is too high, maybe. But
well, we can't stop young people.
yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah,
But I just like don't really need data on young people, because I think that they probably should just be patient. Anyway,
yes.
Okay. Point number 2 that Crimson Flower brought up for why you should not do a nap-only sleep schedule was the difficulty. He said things like willpower, strictness, and probable failure as problems for why it wouldn't work. And then he also sort of, I don't know, it almost felt a little ad hominem to me, like, you crazy bastards, and what do you need to be so manly? What are you, 12?
We are very manly.
We're so manly. No, I do think that that's, like, unnecessarily gendered language, which I guess now looking at their data, I guess I get why that's the association, because, like, what was it, like, 85% men who are in the, like, polyphasic discord?
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily to mean that 85% of people doing polyphasic sleep are men, but, like, the internet community seems to be majority men, and to that majority.
Yeah, and I think most anonymous online communities are majority men.
That's a really good point. Yeah, what is it? There are no women on the internet? I think I've heard that. So I think making it, like, an issue of, like, manliness or gender kind of is unnecessary, because I think it boils down to just values. The difficulty of doing it might be a main reason that someone chooses to try one of these sort of harder sleep schedules, and that's valid if that's someone's reason.
And both of us have challenge listed as one of our values, one of our top 5 values.
Yeah, so we did this deck of cards, and they all have a value on them, and you're supposed to sort them, and you go through all the cards, and you land on your 5 sort of core values as a person.
And I'm so thankful for it.
It's so interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting. And anyway, Benzie and I both have challenge in our top 5. And I think that, that says something. Like, it says something about what we care about in terms of the things that we attempt. It's not just about success. It's not just about the benefits, even, of whatever we're trying. Like,
productivity and health were not in my top 5.
No! Health was in my not important at all pile, because I have a chronic illness. Like, health is, like, not even, like, health isn't merit-based for one, but it's also, like, not within my reach. Like, I can't do the behaviors required to be healthy. I'm, like, unhealthy. Oops. Yeah. It's too late. So I'm, like, over it. Yeah, but I don't know. I was thinking about all the things that people do for sort of, for reasons of, like, difficulty or even danger. Like, people walk on coals, and people skydive, and people swim with sharks.
Just
like,
because.
None of these things are, like, useful or really even beneficial. I mean, maybe if there's, like, a cash prize. It's mostly just because we're humans on the planet, and we don't know why we're here, and we're, like, bored and sad, and so you have to fill your time with something.
Yeah, and there was an analogy in the video that I really didn't connect with about being able to grab a cookie off a counter or grab a cookie out of the middle of a fire. And what I wrote down for that...
I have what you wrote.
Okay, thank you.
Hard and dangerous are different.
Yes, hard and dangerous are different. So there's a difference between, like... So if I was going to do that analogy, I would say there's a cookie on the counter that you can eat, or there's just a mildly tastier cookie, but you have to do an obstacle course to get it.
I was thinking of an obstacle. I'm like, obviously I'm going to do the obstacle course. I'm so excited, and it's imaginary.
Yeah, and actually, even if it was the exact same cookie, I might do the obstacle course.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm very curious to know what Crimson Flower would get if he did the card sort. But yeah, I think it would be fascinating to learn what your core 5 values are.
Also, if you're unwilling to do, this is specifically to Crimson Flower, I am interested in some level of discourse with you. If you are unwilling to do the card activity, but are willing to sit and think about and write down what you think your top 5 values are.
Yeah, that would be cool too.
That would also be interesting. So.
Yeah, and I do feel like we've been able to deduce some of what your values are because you express your desires in your videos, and that's part of it. But having like a core 5 is really, I find it really useful.
I also find it useful.
Yeah, and interesting. It's just cool. I don't know. Okay, so here's another Steve Pavlina quote. This is the last thing on values. Context. So this is what he wrote in response to someone sending him an article that was saying that polyphasic sleep is impossible for humans. Another sweeping generalization about all humans universally, which I'm skeptical of.
Despite some evidence that polyphasic sleep is impossible for humans, I'm moderately skeptical of the general assumption that my results in any endeavor must naturally be the same ones predicted by some study that was done on an infinitesimal fraction of the human population, as if the results of studies on so-called normal people are therefore predictive of my results as an individual. I don't automatically dismiss such studies out of hand, but I take them with a grain of salt and see how they mesh with my own experience and knowledge. Most of the time, they're in agreement. I'm happy to accept that if I swallow poison, I'll get sick or die, because others who have tried it have suffered such a fate. I don't see a good reason why my results should be different, and the risk-reward ratio just isn't there to justify the attempt. However, whenever I have a sufficient doubt, and the risk-reward ratio for an attempt, and the risk-reward ratio for a personal test is reasonable, then I prefer to test for myself. Polyphasic sleep was one of those situations. After reading the results of others' experiments, both positive and negative, I didn't know whether or not I could do it, but I felt it was worth the risk to find out. That's us.
Steve is such a solid writer and solid thinker to me. That's like a really coherent point, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do disagree with some of the stuff he says about the power of intention, but...
Oh, yeah. Law of attraction stuff, I'm like... Meh.
I have only read his blog about polyphasic sleeping, so I don't want to stand by anything he said outside of that, because I have no clue what he said.
Yeah.
Just,
yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, even just this quote specifically, I think it really touches on the values thing, that, like, any given person approaching the question of, should I do a polyphasic sleep schedule, and which one should I do, is going to weigh the risks and the rewards and in line with the benefits of whatever schedule they're considering. And different people are going to come to different answers. Like, for some people, they're going to be like, ooh, but the risk is going to be like, I might be in some pain for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, that's too much. I don't want to do that, right? But other people are going to be like, oh yeah, the risk is that I might die, and that's worth it to me. You know what I mean? Like, that's if you like your reason, then it's a good enough reason.
It actually does remind me a lot of when I ate nothing but meat for 90 days.
I have my own biases. Go on.
Yeah, the risk was I decided to eat other food. I didn't feel like there was a very high risk. I'd feel sick and then I changed my mind,
Yeah.
But the reward from the person I was listening to, which is Dr. Sean Baker, just seemed awesome. And then I did really enjoy it and only quit because of all the other yummy food in the world.
Like avocados and onions.
Yeah. Well, and like cookies and...
Oh! Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah.
I do not have a sweet tooth.
I have a major sweet tooth. Cheesecake for days.
Oh my god.
But...
Can you do a meat and cheesecake only with that?
No, because the whole point is no sugar being negative to it. Just the point I'm making is it sounded crazy and tons of people were like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. But at the same time, it was like, how is it going to hurt me?
Right, everything is temporary.
Yeah, even if I got scurvy, I could cure it by eating food.
Yeah.
And that was what I considered the worst case scenario, was get scurvy from eating all meat. Which did not even come close to happening.
Well, and the curable and temporary risks just don't faze me as someone who has incurable permanent health problems. I just can't care that much. I don't know. I had talked to my doctor too before trying this.
Yeah.
And So I did take it seriously. I don't know. Whatever. Okay. Okay. Crimson Flower's third point for why you should never do a nap-only schedule was long-term health issues. Oh, appropriate segue. Yes. So I think it's fair to consider the possible health impacts when deciding which polyphasic schedule to try. But I don't think that that's a good enough reason for everyone to choose not to do the, like, hardest ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, case in point, 2 people in this room. But also, like, bless you. So in the video, we did the 2-week update video, at the very end, I looked at the timestamps, it's like 37:45. I went on, like, a mini rant about being a person with chronic illness and my sort of thoughts on that, and I'll try to reiterate them sort of roughly here. And it's basically that being healthy is not a guarantee, and for some people, doing normal everyday tasks has negative outcomes to their health. And so it's, like, ableist to say that you should never do things that have any negative health outcomes. And beyond that, sort of more philosophically, as I've gotten older and sort of gone through the grief process of having a chronic illness, I feel like I view everything now as medicine with side effects. So, like, I like to run for my mental health and my, like, I don't know, cardiovascular fitness, but it's, like, hard on my joints. And I like to eat cookies sometimes because they're comfort food. Well, really, I like chicken nuggets, but like, comfort food is good for my, like, soul and my attitude and maybe, like, my mental health and relieving stress, but it's maybe, like, bad for my arteries and stuff. And then actually the, like, literal medicine I'm on for my autoimmune disease keeps my life in way less pain, but also blocks my immune system from protecting me in lots of other ways. So, like, every choice I'm making for my health is also going to have drawbacks in some other area. And there's just no perfect choice. There's no perfect behavior that's going to be net. I mean, I think it's about choosing what's going to be net positive based on what you are trying to balance for. But nothing is going to be purely positive, especially, you know, drastic sleep adjustments.
Yeah.
And you get to choose what drawbacks are worth it for you to risk. And I think that that's really valid for individuals to do. Oh, and then you also question the health issues themselves. Like, beyond the philosophical, like, overarching, you know.
Yeah, so the ones mentioned in the video were, first of all, from people who did not finish the transition period.
Right, he said it was mostly people who had done, like, 1 to 2 weeks of adaptation and then had washed out.
Yeah. So my first thought on that is then, does that mean that they got the horrible health side effect of insomnia? Or did they just have to then do an adaptation period back to monophasic sleep? And my second thought is, from the people who I have talked to, my experience, and the blog posts I have seen, people who have done the Ubermin and been on it have not experienced these adverse side effects.
Yeah.
So,
well, and also have had, like, positive long-term side effects that were part of my main motivation for wanting to do Uberman. Like, I wanted the skill of falling asleep quickly, and I think Uberman is the most surefire way of acquiring that skill.
Yeah, the first time I did Uberman was in 2010, then in 2012, and I haven't done it again till now, but I have kept the skill of falling asleep nearly immediately.
It's freakish, and I want it. And I kind of have it now, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that was it for point number 3. The fourth point from Crimson Flower's video on why you should not do Uberman or other nap-only schedules was that you need a buddy in order to adapt. Which, it's true, I think, that it's recommended to have a buddy. It's definitely a help. But it's, like, demonstrably not true that you need a buddy because Steve Pavlina adapted alone, if we believe his blog, which, like, why not?
Yeah.
You adapted alone the second time, which was easier than the first time, but still you did it. And my friend Grayson adapted alone, and that was his first time, and he just, like, really wanted to play a lot of Warcraft.
Also, I just don't see that even if you had to have a second person, that was an absolute requirement. To me, that's not a reason not to do the schedule.
Yeah. Most people in the world live with other people. We looked it up, and it's something like, if the average for the world, including old people who are more likely to live alone, is like 15%. live
Yeah.
alone. And I'm one of those 15%, and I, like, found a workaround. Like, I just had you come stay with me. And that was...
and even more, like, condensed in the U.S., people under 60 is 10%.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, yeah, this point doesn't really convince me because it's just, like, yeah, it just seems like a recommendation that's, like, pretty easily achievable.
Yeah, I actually am thinking that I really dislike the idea of having to do something with someone else as, like, a downside, because to me it's like a value of mine to like build community and to include other people in your thing. So being like, it'd be better if I could just do it alone, to me, like, seems isolationist. And
yeah, it occurs to me that actually one of my 5 values from the values card sort, the 5th one I ended up with, was intimacy.
That's on mine too.
Of course it is. I knew I liked you. Yeah, and so, like, intimacy, like, bonding with other people and feeling connected is really important. It was, like, so obvious how this played into that because I get to, like, bond with you for almost 3 weeks.
Yeah, and anybody who has watched our other videos, we are, like, super cute together.
We're clearly buds. We're buds. We're buds. Yeah. Strong pro, not a con. It's a pro. Yeah. Make some friends. I don't know, guys.
Yeah.
Call us. Betsy might do it for you. Well, okay, you know what? And even beyond, like, having someone stay with you, you could also, like, get a friend who would call you.
Yeah, because staying awake is something you need help with too. So just being on a video chat for a few hours can be really stimulating.
Yeah. So that's point number 4. Point number 5. So, Crimson Flower's last point for why you should not do, or I suppose technically the title of his video was what to consider before. So, like,
that was a clickbait title though, because the whole video.
Yeah. You're right.
And
I'm trying to be really.
Yeah, and not just that video, but his other rhetoric and posts have been clearly anti-nap only. Yeah.
Okay. So, Crimson Flower's 5th point for why you should not do a nap-only sleep schedule was that you have to need the extra time. You need to be very busy, and you in order to justify doing it, you should be required to be extremely productive. And he talks about some of the math around, like, the difference between, like, Everyman 3 and Uberman, for example, is 2 hours of sleep. And he says that seems like a lot because it's, you know, you're getting 100% more sleep in Everyman 3 than in Uberman. But then he says, well, but look at it from the wake time. It's actually only 10% more time awake, which is true. But 10% adds up.
Yeah, that's 14 hours a week, which is one monophasic day.
Yeah, like, I mean, depending on how much you sleep, yeah.
Yeah, which means that's 50 extra days a year. Like,
yeah.
That's a month and a half of extra time.
Like, I don't know, like, compound interest and, like, you know, a journey starting with a single step. Like, we know that small amounts of things add up pretty quickly, and 10% is, like, actually a pretty big chunk to get out of every single day. So anyway, it is a lot of time. But beyond that, like, productivity and maximizing your, like, output in your life and being really productive is just not the only reason to want to do
even
a nap-only schedule.
My goals. It's so capitalism. Like,
I feel like you could be, like, an entrepreneur or, like, have a job that you wanted to do more of, but that's just not the only reason.
Yeah.
You're, like, cringing.
There's so many other reasons, too.
Yeah. Do you want to hear some I wrote down?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Reason number 1, challenge. Curiosity/boredom. Strict structure is desired. That one was big for me with the pandemic because time felt like a wasteland and I was just home alone forever. And now I have, like, 6 little compartments of my day that I can, like, put towards different things. And I actually think the strictness of the nap times is really beneficial to me. 4 was as a strategy for adapting more easily to Everyman or other sleep schedules. Like, if you want to land on an Everyman sleep schedule, there is the argument out there, although not by Crimson Flower. He thinks the reverse. But some people on the internet, and I think it's plausible, believe that starting with the more aggressive nap schedule will make it easier to transition to like an Everyman schedule.
Because it's a faster acclimation, and then it's so easy to go backwards.
Yeah. That's like part of part of his premise in one of his different videos that it's like pretty easy to repetition your sleep in the
Other direction.
in the increase. Yeah. Yes. The fifth one I wrote down was knowing your body and getting close to the edge of your variables. And by that I mean, like, I think that it's an appealing idea to like have to learn what it really feels like when you're tired and what your body is doing. Like, one of the things you described from previous Uberman periods was that you could feel your body, like, after exercise, you felt it becoming sore, and then you felt it feeling better. Yeah, that was, like, really interesting to me. And I, as someone who feels like they're not very in touch with my body, I feel like I'm not very in touch with my body, and it really interests me to learn that as a skill. Like, I don't feel like that comes naturally to me. And part of my issue with monophasic sleep, and part of the reason I think that I went through, like, complete sleep reversal when I had no external scheduling, was because I think I had trained myself out of ever listening to the symptoms that tell me it's time to go to bed. I would ignore those for like 5 hours routinely. And now I notice them.
Yeah.
You know, in part because I made them way worse for a while. But now I feel like I really have gotten to know them, and now I notice them, and I'm just like aware of them in a way that I never was before. So that's another reason. And then the last reason, I mean, I was just like pulling at straws or whatever, but simplicity or symmetry could be a thing that people desire, you know?
Yeah.
All the other sleep schedules have, like, you know, they're like
a little more complicated.
They're like chunkier, you know? And if you want one that's like, you know, and it's like a beautiful 6-pointed star or whatever, why not?
I love that one of his points was that you have to be super busy, and then on your list, literally, you have the word boredom.
Yeah.
Like, that's exciting to me. Other reasons I like is, for me, when I've been on Uberman, because I have done Everyman too, like, post-Uberman, was feeling like I was in God mode. It's a completely different feeling than being on Everyman, where I still feel like you get sleep and you can feel days, like, what day it is comes back to you. And I really like that about Uberman, that your sense of time is just like...
Yeah, you know, it kind of reminds me of, have you ever done a sensory deprivation tank?
Mm-mm.
Well, they're fascinating, and you're, like, floating in salt water, and you can't see anything, or hear anything, or feel anything, kind of. It's bizarre. But it's, like, a very fascinating sort of blank slate mental experience. And I think it's the same kind of brand of interesting to experience time with no real, like, finish and start kind of a thing. Like, I remember, I think I was, like, falling asleep to a nap, and I was thinking about time, like you do, and I was realizing that my previous experience of days felt very linear. Like, there was, like, a day segment, and then there was a sleep, and then there was a day, and then there was a sleep, and it just felt like a straight line like that.
Yeah.
But now, with the sleep cycles happening, I mean, with 6 sleeps happening, or sometimes 7 in a day, time feels like a spiral to me, you know? And the, like, rhythms of the days feel more connected to each other, and also it all feels more continuous. And, like, it's not like a spiral is more continuous than a straight line. Those are both continuous things. But for whatever reason, that image feels really salient to me, and is, like, part of what appeals to me about the Uberman schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just interesting. And, like, I'm not gonna not want that just because you say I won't be as productive. I don't know. Yeah, I think, again, it just depends on what you value. And, like, if the only thing you value is, like, capitalist productivity, then yes, the case could be made that the Uberman schedule isn't worth the, like, the costs of the added difficulty isn't worth the 10% more productive time that you might have. I'll buy that argument. Like, that in its own is a fine argument. But saying that it's not worth it because that amount of time is all you get, like, there's way more that you get from doing a nap-only schedule in terms of all of the things that I listed. Society definitely high-fives the productive of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never get high fives.
What?
That was a joke.
You're an ENFP. ENFPs are notoriously productive. It's really annoying.
Yeah, actually, I'm
like, what are you talking about?
I'm one of the most busy people I know, so.
Okay, so that's the 5 points. And then the end of Crimson Flowers video, he talked about sort of his reasoning. I think those were his, like, logical arguments, which, you know, we could debate about how logical they were. But then he followed up with, I think, more clues about what his actual values were, which I found maybe more interesting. And he straight up said that his, like, goal is for the whole world to adopt polyphasic sleep schedules. Like, he wants it to become the norm. Which I, like, don't share that goal.
No, I do not either.
I wouldn't mind it. I think it's fine. But I don't think it's intrinsically better or worse, like, any particular sleep schedule. If you're sleeping 16 hours a day versus 2 hours a day in 20-minute increments, like, neither of those have moral value to me. What I care about is how they are fulfilling an individual's desires. Like, I care about people's autonomy, and I care about their values, and I care about how the things that they are doing line up with those.
Yeah, I care about people having access to the knowledge that polyphasic sleep exists.
Yeah,
so they're
I
not
agree with that.
stuck under monophasic sleep just because that's the only thing they know about.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I think that, like, knowledge should be accessible to everyone. So in that case, I do have some, like, worldwide aspirations related to this. Yeah, I just think that, like, I couldn't really tell if he thinks that, like, polyphasic sleep is better than monophasic sleep in, like, a moral way, but for me to want everyone to do it, I would have to have some kind of, like, moral judgment, and I think that that's, like, an optional assessment.
Yeah.
That is not objective, I think. Yeah, and then the other thing I worry about with that goal in particular is that if we were to achieve that before achieving some, like, systems-wide overhauls...
Huge.
Yeah, then like, what would happen is workers would be exploited because they'd have so much more time.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't know, first things first is how I feel about that.
Yeah, the 20-hour work day would exist.
Like, right, or, like, truck drivers who, like, never get to... I don't know, it's just... Basically, we should have a basic income and healthcare for all, and then everyone can do polyphasic sleep in their vast amounts of free time.
If they feel like it.
Yeah, if they want. Right. Okay, but I did want to get into a little bit about his second point. So his first point was he wants everybody to do it and it to be a worldwide norm. Or maybe he didn't say everyone, but he wants it to be the norm. But then his follow-up reason for why people trying nap-only schedules is against that is because there are so many failures. And he views preventing failures as part of the goal of making it a worldwide norm. And basically he came up with two sort of examples of what happens when people fail an attempt for a nap-only schedule. And the first is that someone abandons the attempt quietly, and the other one is where they abandon it vocally. And so in the first one, abandoning the attempt quietly, it's like they're making a blog or a video log or whatever, and then they fail, but they just sort of peter off and quit. And he says that is a problem because other people might find the sort of incomplete remains of that experience and think, oh, this was cool, I'm going to try it, without seeing the whole picture. And, like, that's valid, I want complete data, obviously.
But I also thought it's important to point out, as someone with many failed blog attempts, not about Uberman specifically each time,
Shocking.
but I am a project starter.
Yeah.
Is when in 2012, when I was doing my vlog, which you guys can watch the 10 videos I recorded for that, I quit recording videos, but I did not quit doing the sleep schedule for months. So I do think it is unfair to say everyone who's quit logging their experience has quit doing the experience, because having a blog and doing polyphasic sleep are two different hobbies.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, definitely. And, yeah, that's a good point. And also, like, I mean, granted, it's possible that his claim about this has a lot of, like, he might have lots and lots of anecdotal experience with people, like, logging it and then quitting, and him knowing, like, that they quit and that's why they stopped vlogging or whatever. Yeah. That is possible. But it's still not, anyway, it's not broad enough for me. But, okay, so the second category of abandoners were the vocal abandoners, who he said might lash out, discredit the community's scientific endeavors and discourage those who might try even the more realistic schedules. Which I feel for that, but number one, I think that you can't discredit scientific endeavors if they're scientific enough. Like, the science should hold its own. Which, like, of course, from this video you can tell I don't feel like the science has held its own, at least to some extent. Like, I have some qualms with the ways that
with the conclusions.
Yeah, I think that some of them are unfounded. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, at least so far. Like, maybe I just like didn't search hard enough for the data, but yeah, it wasn't convincing enough for me. And also, I think based on these values and like the reasons that he has, to me, it's clear that it's not just that he looked at all of the anecdotes and data that he had and then was like interpreting that neutrally. I think he already had a preconceived desire that people not try this because their failure goes against his like worldwide goal, and then these were the reasons he found to support that, which is like a little bit different.
Yeah.
But so the vocal abandoners, on that respect, I think that the solution is not to discourage people who would, like, you know, throw an anti-polyphasic sleep tantrum after failing. The correct, how do I want to say this?
We don't want to stop them from trying polyphasic sleep. We want to
train them to have more emotional resilience.
Yeah. And I think we can do that by coding information about polyphasic sleep with how okay it is and how encouraged it is even to fail if it's not working for you. And maybe not even use the word failure, because what does that even mean if you're finding something that works for you?
Yeah, I feel very pro-failure in general. And I had Benzie, what did I have you Google? Are people, I think the question was, because you made the claim in your video that people are less likely to try again after a failed attempt. And I was like, is that true? I don't know. And so you Googled it, and it turns out... It is true. Except...
But it's easy to fix.
Yeah, you can train yourself to experience failure as part of an ongoing process.
Yeah, and that's something we talk about as people who collect hobbies, which I think is both of us.
Yep, that's me.
is... we have super developed our failure muscle. Like,
yeah.
For me, being bad at something is...
It's like what Jake the dog said.
Yeah.
Dude, sucking at something is the first step towards being sort of good at something.
Yeah, if we can structure the information we're giving people about polyphasic sleep with these ideas that, the first time it's probably not going to work out. Right. Then when they fail the first time, they can be all angry, but it's like, we told you.
Yeah.
It doesn't work the first time.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I feel like I benefited a lot from starting this process knowing, I might not go through with this. Like, I might quit halfway through. I don't know what it's going to feel like. Who knows what I'll want to do. And I might get to the end and succeed at adapting and then decide that I don't like it and change my mind. Like, I sort of included all of those possibilities so that I didn't end up feeling like guilty or ashamed or like bruised in my ego if something like went wrong, because nothing has gone wrong. And it reminded me, thinking about this and like training yourself to be good at failure made me think of the ego puppy analogy that I use, which is, if you imagine that your ego is a young dog, and normally, like, you know, the default for egos is that they dislike certain things that sort of threaten their identities and how they feel. So if you, for example, if an ego, if you believe, I don't know, what's an erroneous belief? Let's say you believe the moon is made out of cheese. I don't know. And someone's like, actually, here's all the evidence that you're wrong. The ego's first instinct as a baby dog is to resist and double down and be like, no, it definitely is cheese and you're wrong and stupid and like la 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 la. And that's the first instinct. And that's, you know, why we have a lot of conflict in political discourse and a lot of people with really bullshit opinions. But I think that all it takes is to train the ego puppy. You just have to give it a treat when it does something good. And you can train your puppy, your ego, to enjoy finding out that it's incorrect. And that's something that I feel like I've done pretty well, to the point where I'm like, I can't wait to get a response video to this. I really hope he responds and like tells me all of the ways that I was wrong, because I just want to get better and smarter and more correct. Yeah, so anyway, the ego puppy reminds me of, like, you can also train the ego puppy to enjoy failing. Like, you failed, good work. You, like, believed something was worth doing and you were interested in trying things and now you know more for the future. Like, all of those are pros. And I think it's maybe more worthwhile to spend some time trying to help people build skills around that and figuring out, like, where their values are and why they actually want to do the Uberman schedule, or whichever one.
Yeah, and for me, if part of the goal is getting more people to do it, the Uberman is definitely the sexiest schedule. Like, it's exciting,
Yeah.
it feels crazy.
Right,
it's
the
hard.
2-hour number is like, what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, God mode. So if you can get somebody excited to do polyphasic sleep through the Uberman, and then they try it and it's like, man, this isn't working, I'm going to do Everyman, like, that seems way more likely to me than people being excited to try the Everyman schedule.
Right, I feel like what, I don't know, if I was trying to game the system or, like, you know, manipulate people, I would be like, luring them in with the Uberman and the promise of the 22-hour day, and then allowing them to try it, and then saying, oh, that didn't work, but that's okay, we have this backup. And it's got all of these features that you liked, but none of these features that didn't work for you about that. Like, that just seems like it would also work.
Yeah.
For those, yeah, I feel like there's a better way to game it than just de facto discouragement across the board.
And I also pulled this other quote off of Steve's blog. I'm 34 years old, so I have a lot more life experience than your typical 20-year-old college student. I see a lot of students attempting polyphasic sleep, but virtually none of them seem to be able to adapt to it successfully. Making it through the adaptation period is very, very hard. If you look at how other people are doing, the odds of success are very low. If I had tried polyphasic sleep back when I was a student, I'm not sure I could have done it. In college, I wasn't yet an early riser or a vegan. My self-discipline was lower. My schedule wasn't as flexible, and I didn't have nearly as much personal development knowledge and experience. I might have had more youthful enthusiasm about making the attempt, but I wouldn't have been as good at directing my energy and pacing myself. I think I probably would have started out with a lot of passion and then burned out after a few days. If you can manage to adapt to polyphasic sleep in your early 20s, I think you're one incredible human being. I didn't just pull that quote because it calls me an incredible human being, but but yeah, I think what's important about that isn't to tell young people in general that they can't do the polyphasic sleep schedule, but that enthusiasm isn't the skill that you're going to need. Look at this, and the skills you're actually going to need are, like, resiliency, discipline, being okay to fail or change.
Well, and, like, the emphasis on personal development, too. I think that Steve's emphasis on personal development, like, that's the whole shtick of his blog.
Yeah.
Like, he does personal development in a ton of areas. That's, like, that's what these young men, maybe the weak spots for them, is a focus on personal development instead of just, like, achievement-based attempts at things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Productivity-based achievement.
Yeah.
You know, that actually is just making me think now. I didn't upload the interview that we did with Grayson because the streaming, like, quality was so low. It was cutting out so much.
Choppy.
But I'm thinking that the reason Grayson decided to do it was to play more World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
And part of me is, like, maybe part of why he succeeded was because the only upside or downside was play.
Yeah.
And, yeah, there was no pressure on it.
Yeah. So the pressure was lower, and also the desire was there.
Yeah.
I feel like if I was trying to do polyphasic sleep for the purpose of doing a job that I mean, I realize it's possible to, like, love and be excited about your job, but jobs are work, and I don't want to do all work all the time.
Yeah.
I just don't. And I feel like if that were my motivation, I would probably fail.
Yeah.
Whereas right now my motivation is, like, why... I mean, you know, I've listed them all in all these videos, but, like, productivity straight up isn't really one of them. I hope I'm more productive. I like being productive, but I definitely don't want to tie my, like, value as a person and my ability to not feel bad about myself to my productivity, because when I do that, I
feel shitty.
I feel shitty all the time and do nothing because it's like, what's the point? Yeah. Oh, depression.
And I don't want to come off like I have all the skills or know anything either. Like,
I'm pretty sure you said earlier, like, you almost hope that it's a genetic, like, mutation and that you are that special.
Yeah. So what I said is I'm not sure which one I hope is true because they both benefit me. if it's just a hard thing to do and it's possible, that's exciting to me and I want to share it with people. But if it's true that less than 1% of the population is an anomaly that can magically do this, like, okay, I'm a genetic anomaly, you know.
That is pretty cool.
Sorry, I'm so special. And actually, 1% of the population doesn't feel that special of a percentage either.
Well, I mean, it's an imaginary number that he pulled out of his butt. You want me to make it smaller?
Yeah.
0.001%.
But I don't want that to be true. I want it to be true that people can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which maybe means we're slightly biased about our arguments, but
yeah,
I'm open to that. Prove it. Okay.
But I do. Okay, I just want to say I think it's much more likely that I'm not special.
You know what though? So me acknowledging the bias is my ego puppy being like, I can be wrong right now, maybe. But actually, like, in terms of logic, like, the claim Crimson Flower is making is like a really broad universal claim, which is a really large claim, which makes it a really weak claim that requires a lot of proof, and the burden of proof is on him. Yeah. Whereas what we're doing is going, are you sure? Really? Which is like a really small and pointed and therefore really strong claim, and the burden of proof is not on us to be like, are you sure? And here are counterexamples. So I'm actually...
And I also feel like that genetic claim is missing so many other elements that would stop people, like having like families that make them uncomfortable to do it, having jobs that make it extremely difficult to follow the schedule. Both of the times I quit in the past was because I got a new job that would not allow me to take my naps.
Yep. And there was some data in we looked at the like survey thing, which was like, I don't know how many. It wasn't a lot of people, which like isn't your fault, but there was some data on the jobs that people had. But I think like capitalism and the culture, the broader culture being like pretty strongly monophasic, that right there is an extra difficult, I think, to adapt to a very different and very strict sleeping schedule.
Yeah.
And if the culture were set up in different ways, like, I think that we would have better results.
And even Steve, who had a super successful time, it seemed, the reason he says he quit is because everybody else is being monophasic.
Yeah.
And he just wanted to go back to society, which I don't understand.
I could not relate.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I do have hope that I will be on the schedule for a very long time, the longest I've ever done it. So, which would only be 5 months, you know. So,
yeah. I'm like, and I still feel pretty open-minded about like what this is going to turn out to be for me, because like, you know, I don't feel fully adapted yet. I'm still like, failure's still an option, like it always is, and and I also like so many things I try, I might decide to quit it for whatever reason. But right now I still feel very excited and very invested in what I'm doing. And so that's like enough for me.
Yeah. And we talked a lot about in our last video what is failure to us. And quitting the schedule isn't even failure to me.
What would failure even be? I don't remember having that conversation. Failure would be if I made choices not in line with my values. Okay, so wrapping it up. We're on the last page of my notes.
The last hour.
Thank you for... Okay. Yes, so my statement to Crimson Flower is that I think that when faced with people who want to try nap-only schedules, it feels more worthwhile to me that your approach should be these 3 things. Thing number 1, seek to learn people's values with curiosity. Try and understand, like, why they want to do a nap-only schedule. It might not just be that they, like, want to be manly and get the cookie out of the fire. It could be deeper than that, and I think you should be open to that possibility. Thing number 2 is support their autonomy. And, like, this is based in my own values, because I care a lot about individual autonomy, and if I could tell everyone what to do, I would tell them to let everyone be autonomous. And then thing number 3 was to aid people in building emotional resilience and rationality. I think that will deal with some of your fears that you're trying to prevent from happening with discouraging people from trying these nap-only schedules. And I think that instead, if you looked at it like this is an opportunity to share skills with people that could benefit them in more ways than one, I think that will have better and farther-reaching outcomes. Farther-reaching outcomes.
Further?
No. Wait.
Yeah, because
you're right.
Is
far is in real life, and further is like ideas.
Yes.
You're right. Yes. So those are my recommendations. Take them or leave them. Please take them. So to wrap it up, I guess I want to say, like, in all, my issue ended up being less about the individual points and more about the sort of overarching motivation and reason for those ideas. And I don't know, I don't think that those individual, those 5 points actually add up to the case that you're trying to make, but I'm pretty interested in what your response is. Oh, and then I have requests. I have 3 requests, maybe 4. Number 1, further conversation. It would be awesome if you responded to us in whatever form you have the energy for. Thanks, Benzie, for editing this and making it so that this was all the work I had to do.
Yeah.
Further conversation. Number 2, sources and data for the claims that you have made. I'm super open to being incorrect or to being shown that that there is sufficient evidence for some of the claims that you've made. I'm very here for that. Like, I did some searching, but I didn't find what I would need to be convinced, but that doesn't mean it's not there. And then number 3 is that you print out some values cards and cut them apart and then do the exercise and tell us what your 5 values were.
Yeah.
That would be sweet. And then I guess I just also wanted to reiterate, like, my friendly intentions. I am not coming from a place of animosity. There we go. Okay. And then do we want to say our values?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Oh, we're almost done.
yeah. Mine are, in no particular order, intimacy, pleasure, challenge, openness, and creativity.
Those are really good ones. Okay, mine are in the order that I was, the first one was the easiest to keep in each round, and then the later ones had more deliberation, so they kind of are in order of importance. Yeah. My 5 values were autonomy, self-knowledge, challenge, passion, and intimacy.
So we have challenge and intimacy shared.
Yeah. You forgot to have the other 3 that I have as your values, but
no, those are not my top values.
That's okay. People are different, and I embrace that. It's good.
And don't you feel like this list is very mean?
I do. I don't know why I made jokes about wishing your values were the same as mine.
So I really hope people will join us and have a conversation with us, ask us questions, or tell us that we're wrong. Yeah, I hope to have, like, as much communication as possible, and I do find value in creating community, which, oh my gosh, that reminded me of something I forgot to say that was in my notes, is that the people who are most interested in the online community, from my experience mostly with the atheist community, are new baby people. So that it's very likely
like baby people in an interest?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So that it's highly possible, from my perspective, that most of the people spending time in the subreddit and the Discord are people who are fairly new to polyphasic sleep, and that there may be like lots of older people who have been doing it for years who aren't talking about it on the internet. Yeah. And so I think it's troublesome to disregard all those people as potentially existing just because they're not in this bubble of the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is that. Take it
We
sleazy.
did it. I really hope you don't keep that.